API Lifecycle struggles with fractured tools and workflows. RapidAPI Studio fixes this by offering the only tool you need for complete API Lifecycle management. In this video, I'll explain what is an API Lifecycle and how you can manage full API Lifecycle with RapidAPI Studio. API Lifecycle gives directions for managing an API from when it is created to when it is retired. It provides a clear-cut plan for the entire lifespan of an API to create solid API solutions and avoid potential barriers and mistakes. We can break down the API Lifecycle into these 7 stages: the design, develop, publish, secure, discover, monitor, and deprecate stage. Let's see how RapidAPI Studio is there to back up for every step of the API lifecycle. Let's begin with the design stage. An API's lifecycle starts with the design phase. It involves planning, designing the API, and laying out the API requirements in an API specification file. Let's go back to RapidAPI Studio dashboard. You can get started with RapidAPI Studio by creating new APIs. For that, you need to click this Add API project in the top right corner. It enables spec-driven development, which means you can either create an API from scratch or import specification using OpenAPI, Postman collection, GraphQL schema, and so on. We learn to add API projects in the later part of this course. Now, let's go ahead and move to the second stage of API lifecycle, which is the develop stage. When its design is ready, it is time to develop the API. A team of API developers works on implementing the API according to the decisions and specifications in the design plan. RapidAPI Studio offers 2 features: the built-in HTTP client for debugging and testing. Let's discuss each one of them. For that, I'm going back to RapidAPI Studio and going to click one of the APIs that I've already added. And here in the left sidebar, I'm going to click this request right here. RapidAPI Studio has an HTTP client inside it that you can use to test and debug the APIs you develop. It is a feature-packed API developer tool to collaboratively develop, debug, test, and interact with APIs. The next feature is the testing feature. Inside RapidAPI Studio, you will find a dedicated API testing tool where you can create and manage comprehensive API tests from development through deployment. When you open or create an API, like I've already opened an API, this is the Zoo Animal API that I've already added, so I've opened that. You see a test option on the left sidebar right here. Let's click that. Here you can code an API test, use the visual editor, or use automatic test generation to create an API test. With RapidAPI Studio, you can also schedule your API test to execute automatically after a specific time. We learn all about this in my upcoming video. So let's now move on to the third phase, that's the publish phase. At the end of the development phase, it is time to deploy the finished API to development, staging, and production environments. Then we can make it available to the end users by publishing it. RapidAPI Studio has a hub listing section. Here, the left sidebar menu, I'm clicking hub listing, where you can publish your API on industry-leading API platform, RapidAPI Hub, where security, gateways, monitoring, access controls, and authentication is taken care of for you. Let's now discuss the fourth and the fifth phase together, that is the secure and monetize phase in an API lifecycle. For that, in the hub listing section inside Gateway, I'll be able to secure my API. RapidAPI Studio protects against SQL and JavaScript injection attacks, and it can automatically compare the parameters, headers, and body of request against predefined regex patterns. Let's now talk about the fifth phase, the discover and monetize phase. For that, I am going to click monetize in the hub listing section. RapidAPI Studio has a dedicated monetize section where you can monetize all the APIs you add on RapidAPI Hub. It provides you with 2 options, the public and the private plans. You can customize each plan and set up rate limiting, limit access to an endpoint, and more for a specific plan. I will discuss all of this in detail in my upcoming videos, so stay tuned. Let's go on with the sixth phase, that's the monitor phase. With RapidAPI Studio, API monitoring is as easy as it gets. For that, I'm going back to my RapidAPI Studio account, and here under the analytics section, I'm going to click that. You can find analytics for each of your APIs. It covers the traffic analytics that shows the total API calls average error rate and latency. You can also look at median, max, and minimum error rates and latencies. The user analytics. Here you can find active and total users of your API in the form of a graph. Revenue analytics, you can see how much money your API made over the past 3, 6, or 12 months. Logs, every API request your user makes gets logged here. And alerts, you can set up custom alerts for your API to alert you if something happens. The deprecate phase is the 7th phase in an API lifecycle. Versioning is easy with RapidAPI Studio. You can create multiple versions of an API. For that, I'm going to Hub Listing section, and here I'm going to click this version, V1 right here, and then Manage Versions. For each version, you can define the different base URLs, endpoints, transformations, and more. You can build on top of an existing version or separately, providing backward compatibility to your end users. RapidAPI Studio has addressed several challenges developers face during the API development lifecycle and provides a compact solution for them. In this video, I explained about the API lifecycle and how RapidAPI Studio is managing the entire API lifecycle, and I also discussed the brief interface of RapidAPI Studio. In the next video, I'm going to explain in detail about this hub listing section of RapidAPI Studio, because this we will be using a lot when creating an API and debugging it and testing it. So stay tuned.